I think we're going to see those deportation numbers ramp up as we get more and more people online, working for ICE, going door to door and making sure that if you're an illegal alien, you've got to get out of this country, and if you want to come back, apply through the proper channel.
Where's the warrant? Where's the warrant? Where is it? Can you put the guns down, though? Can you put the guns down? There's kids in this house. He said he doesn't have to show a warrant. Get back. I'm not even touching nobody. Get your hands off of me. Where's the warrant? So you can't answer, but you can flash a light?
I honestly can't believe that this is already happening in America, but that's where we are. Trump's Gestapo is now going door to door in Minneapolis, just as Vice President JD Vance said they would, and they are snatching people from their homes without warrants. And as that's happening, the regime is Hitler posting from official government accounts declaring one homeland, one people, one heritage. And for those who don't know, that is a direct callback to Third Reich era Nazi propaganda like this, which read, one people, one Reich, one Führer. And it's just one of many times that they've paid homage to their Nazi predecessors.
Here's a recent post from the Department of Homeland Security. It says, "We'll have our home again." And you see this image right here. Well, the lyric, "We'll have our home again," is a direct rip from this song that is associated with these white nationalist Nazi groups. This is an anthem that white nationalists sing. Oh, did you think I was done? Because there's more. There was this post from a few months ago from the Department of Homeland Security. "A heritage to be proud of, a homeland worth defending, American progress, John Gast." Well, I'm telling you right now that there is no coincidence that this has exactly 14 words and that the letters H and H are capitalized. And so why do I highlight the fact that it's exactly 14 words? Well, 14 words refers to a white supremacist slogan coined that says we must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. So when they are putting 14 words, that is coded language to other white nationalists and Nazis. And the capital HH, that's a nod to this phrase right here.
So if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's a duck. And in this case, it's a Nazi. And we didn't really need to wait to confirm this until they literally started breaking down people's doors looking for immigrants, because the richest man in the world, a key ally to the regime, was Sig Heiling on day one at Trump's inauguration. And ever since, he's been crying about, quote, demographic replacement amounting to white genocide, and retweeting people calling for remigration, which is a Nazi term for ethnic cleansing. So much like their predecessors in the Third Reich, they believe that their cruelty is justified because in their demented brains, they're the real victims. So just in case you were still on the fence about whether or not it was appropriate to compare what's happening now to Nazi Germany because, you don't want to sound too hyperbolic, I'm here to tell you that you should indeed believe your lying eyes. We've reached the stage already where Trump's Gestapo is disappearing people. And once it gets to that point, the debate is over.
My neighbor is missing. There's a girl that lives in the apartment directly across the way from me. I have not seen her in 2 months. Nobody has. Her car is still in the parking lot. Her family, nobody can get in contact with them. I have no idea where my neighbor is. Do you know where your neighbor is?
You can check out my Facebook, Angel Castillo. You will see a video of my best friend, Lalo Rios, getting taken away for recording. Got taken away, tied up like a hog. And he's a fucking human being. U.S. citizen, by the way. Born and raised here in St. Paul, Minnesota, and gets treated like a fucking criminal for recording. He listened to your orders. You told him to step back, which he did.
Taken away by federal agents?
Yes, sir.
Disappeared.
We don't know where he is. We don't know where he is. We contacted here. They said he's not here. We're trying to contact the county. They just fucking kidnapped him. Where's Lalo? Where's Lalo? Where's Lalo?
When did this happen?
This literally a couple hours ago. 2-3 hours ago. If you go on Angel Castillo on my Facebook, You will see all my lives, all my lives.
A couple hours ago, an American citizen disappeared into the Trump administration's opaque immigration prison system, these black sites that exist in public view.
And this is going to continue to happen because the rule of law has broken down in this country. So the First Amendment protections that we once had no longer protect us now that we've fallen into a dictatorship. Mahmoud Khalil spent months in ICE detention for peacefully protesting against Palestinian genocide. Larry Bushart spent 37 days in jail for posting a Charlie Kirk meme on Facebook. Remember the preschool teacher, Jessie Plichta, who was arrested after she protested the regime's invasion of Venezuela? Well, she ended up spending 7 days in jail. And even elites aren't safe. The regime is literally investigating the head of the Federal Reserve because he refuses to cave to Donald Trump's pressure. So the protections once afforded to us in our now defunct Constitution, like due process, habeas corpus, and even freedom of speech, have been taken away from us and replaced with a sort of soft martial law where what we can and can't do is dictated by a paramilitary-like secret police force. And having your due process rights violated almost feels merciful, given how they can apparently shoot you in the face with impunity now if they want to, because the regime says that that's okay, and they're protecting somebody that committed an execution in broad daylight. And after Renee Good was murdered last week, it wasn't long before other Gestapo threatened to do the same to other people.
They said, "Have you not learned? This is why we killed that lesbian bitch."
Shame on you.
Listen, have y'all not learned from the past couple of days? Have you not learned?
Learned what? What's our lesson here? What do you want us to learn?
Following federal agents.
Give me my phone. We were following them from a safe distance.
Following ICE agents.
Yep, following ICE agents. They stopped in the middle of the road and reversed on 62. They tried to ram our car. They broke my window. They yanked me out by my neck. They threw me to the ground. They stomped on me. They pushed my face into the ground. They put the cuffs on as tight as possible to the point where it took 6 agents to try to get them off.
As they're doing this, are they saying anything?
Yeah, they were calling me a bunch of derogatory names, calling me it. They tried to break my ankle. When he turned my ankle all the way around, I screamed, and he said, "Yeah, I bet you like that, don't you?" They're Nazis. They're Gestapo. They think that they're above the law. They don't care.
They don't, and Renee wasn't their only victim in recent days, mind you. Aside from the 32 other people who died in ICE custody in 2025, 43-year-old Keith Porter, a father of 2, was killed by an off-duty ICE agent on New Year's Eve. But in addition to Keith Porter, ICE in Portland, which is my city by the way, shot 2 additional individuals. This was after Renee Good was assassinated, and thankfully they were only wounded and not killed. But still, they're claiming again that the ICE agents feared for their lives because these individuals tried to run them over with their car, which again, they always fucking say. And the reason why they're so uniquely violent is because they are true believers in what the regime is doing. Jonathan Ross, the ICE agent that executed Renee Good, is described by his family as a hardcore conservative Christian and MAGA supporter who sports "Don't Tread on Me" flags and Trump Vance stickers. Which is ironic because he's the jackbooted thug doing the treading. But he also reportedly argued with his family about the Proud Boys on social media, either because he supports them or he's one of them. And somebody made a really good point on Twitter a couple of weeks ago. I wish that I saved their tweet so that way I can credit them. But they said basically the reason why we're probably no longer seeing U-Hauls drop off hordes of Nazis at anti-Trump protests and, drag queen events is because they're already there, albeit they're just in the streets as ICE agents these days. As Wendell Pierce put it, the Proud Boys are now ICE agents. Neo-Nazis from Charlottesville are now ICE agents. The 3%ers are now ICE agents. And this is something that you can't really prove because in the event you were to even survey ICE agents, I don't think that they would be honest about their core beliefs. Nonetheless, if you could quantify this, I think that it wouldn't be surprising to find out that former members of the Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, and other Nazi organizations are now ICE officers. So make no mistake about it, the ICE Gestapo, regardless of where they came from and if they were actually with these organizations before, either way, they are sociopathic neo-Nazis that are ideologically committed to Stephen Miller's vision of a white ethno-state. It's no longer just about whether or not you're an immigrant. anyone who's not white, regardless of their citizenship status, is a potential target. This man in Minneapolis was being questioned at his work because of his accent. This ICE agent was filmed getting out of his car to go up to this black man, who is a citizen, by the way, to ask him about his immigration status. This black woman who was in a car wreck was abducted by a group of brown shirts, even though she was begging them to let her show them her ID. And this man was yanked out of his vehicle at a gas station and brutalized. And after minutes had passed, they carried away his limp body, and it wasn't even clear if he was unconscious or dead. None of them bothered to check for a pulse. But this is the thing that we are seeing more and more frequently. They always brutalize first, then ask questions later. Here's another example.
What's your name? Jonathan Aguilar Garcia. I'm not a U.S. citizen. I'm not a U.S. citizen. Get the fuck out of here, Race.
Greg Bovino and his thugs were at Target and they arrested these two young Latino boys who were saying they were U.S. citizens. They didn't give an F. And then when they figured it out, what did they do?
Car. This guy right here, they let him out of the vehicle. They tortured him. This guy? This guy right here, yeah. Torture. You okay, man? No, I'm not okay. Bro, shit's crazy. My man's bleeding. Bleeding. They slammed me on the ground. We gotta be able to call somebody. That's just ridiculous. You got family around? You got somebody here, man? Come on, we in here. Come on, man. You work here, don't you? No, I work at Target. You work, bro, come on, bro. It's okay. That is so crazy. Man, slam this man up in the park.
U.S. citizens working at Target, racially profiled. They did not believe them. They were saying they were U.S. citizens.
That also happened in Minnesota, by the way. And just to put things into perspective for you, PBS News reports that there's about 2,000 ICE agents in Minneapolis, and that might not seem like a very large number given how large this organization is. But according to numbers on Wikipedia, at least, the city only has about 600 police officers across their 5 precincts, which means that ICE agents now outnumber cops in Minneapolis by a more than 3-to-1 ratio. And the overwhelming presence of Trump's Gestapo is why we're seeing an influx of human rights abuses, specifically against black and brown people. And just in case there was ever a question about their mentality, listen to this firsthand account from a Minneapolis pastor, because I think that what he says really shows you who we're dealing with.
An ICE agent literally came over to me and said, "What did you say?" I said, "I am not afraid," and they pointed a gun in my face. ICE put handcuffs on my hands and put me in a black SUV. And then a few moments later, they came back and they said, "Are you afraid yet?" And I said, "No." And then they said it. "Well, you're white. You wouldn't be fun anyway." It was then that I knew that this staging, that these ICE raids are really about fear and intimidation.
And that's a really important point. The use of fear and intimidation by dictatorships are necessary in order to maintain order. Because if the masses fear for their safety and their lives, they're less likely to want to challenge the regime by protesting and striking or confronting human rights abuses of the Gestapo head on. It's why they make such a big show of their cruelty. Like, performative cruelty is a term that we've seen because they are going out of their way to demonstrate how inhumane they are. It's why they make such a big show out of their kidnappings and post music video style videos on their social media accounts. It's why Kristi Noem announced that ICE drones will soon be patrolling cities to, quote, keep Americans safe. She knows that the presence of ICE scares people and that the presence of drones by ICE will scare people as well. They all know that ICE's presence is making people nervous. And that's the point. It's the regime's attempt to rule with an iron fist. And this historian explains that the Gestapo of the Third Reich was used in the exact same way, hence why we're seeing so many parallels.
ICE
from here? Where's here?
Is the modern day Gestapo. In 1940s Germany, the Gestapo wasn't a battlefield force. It wasn't storming foreign borders. It was an internal police agency. Its job was to maintain order inside the country for ordinary Germans. The danger, they said, wasn't out there, but it was already among them. Today, in the United States, we see the same thing play out with immigration and custom enforcement. ICE doesn't operate at the border alone. It operates in our neighborhoods, in workplaces, at courthouses, and even at our front doors. Like the Gestapo, enforcement happens when people live their everyday lives. In Germany, the Gestapo targeted people that were labeled as threats to the nation: communists, Romani people, queer people, political dissidents, and people of the Jewish faith. In America, ICE overwhelmingly targets immigrants and asylum seekers, but we're slowly seeing something else happen. They're starting to target Americans. This is in the hopes of instilling fear. The Gestapo didn't need to arrest everyone. They just need people to believe that they could be next. And ICE operates the same way. Public raids, unpredictable detentions, intentionally confusing rules. Fear does the work before enforcement arrives, under the guise of, we're just enforcing the law and we're just doing our job. And while the United States is not 1930s Germany, history doesn't require identical outcomes to offer a warning. The comparison is about structure, about logic, and about what happens when fear replaces due process. Every system of repression insists that it's protecting ordinary people. History asks the harder question, like who was allowed to count as ordinary and who never was. Because by the time society realizes the answer, the machinery has already been built and the damage has already been done.
It is genuinely chilling. And when Trump signed NSPM 7, that gave the regime the authority to treat any and all opponents to the regime as terrorists. It doesn't matter if you follow the law and keep your head down or just disagree respectfully and quietly. If you oppose the regime in any way, shape, or form, or if you exist outside of the parameters of acceptability for their eventual ethno-state, you are an enemy of the state, period, full stop. And as that historian pointed out, it's no longer just immigrants. Increasingly, it's people from all marginalized groups. In fact, genocide scholars from the Lemkin Institute are confirming what trans people have been saying for years now, that the U.S. is officially in the early stages of a trans genocide. And this is based on the legal moves that they've made to erase them out of existence. So make no mistake about it, we are witnessing a Nazi-like purge in this country because this regime, for all intents and purposes, is a Nazi regime. When you see the state try to legally erase human beings from existence, terrorize cities, and go door to door to hunt people down, not to mention execute civilians in broad daylight with impunity, it is no longer a question about whether or not history is repeating itself. In fact, it's more unreasonable to pretend as if that's not the case.